Hi, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the E-Club of District 7710 for Tuesday, January 9th, 2018. This is our first meeting of the year, so Happy New Year. Before Kevin introduces this evening's speaker, we want to let you know about the ways you can connect with our Rotary Club. Our website is leadwithus, leadwith.us, and if you visit the page, you'll be able to learn more about the club and also reach out if you'd like to contact us. We're also on Facebook. You can look for Rotary E-Club of District 7710, and you'll find us on Twitter under Lead With Us and Instagram under Lead With Rotary. So please friend or follow us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to introduce tonight's speaker. Thanks, Kevin.
Sure. I'm excited to introduce Laura. We work together at the Paideia Academy, which is a newly launching charter school in Cabarrus County right outside of Charlotte. And one thing that we share in common is we both grew up in public schools and we're advocates of public schools. I want to share one quick thought. One of my high school teachers, Mr. Hillary Modick, used to say, those who can do, those who can't teach. Those who can't teach, teach teachers to teach. And I have a message from Mr. Modick that Laura Cook is someone who can, does, she teaches, and she teaches teachers to teach. So I just want to go over a little bit of her bio to tell you what I mean by that. Laura Cook received her degree in viola performance from Queens College in New York, after Patinka Kopek from the Juilliard School. She also received her certification and licensure to teach music K through 12 from New York State and taught band, marching band, jazz band, and coached color guard for 5 years in rural upstate New York. After moving to Charlotte, North Carolina in 1993 with her husband and 4 children, Laura taught country orchestra and general music for 12 years at a public Paideia magnet school in Charlotte and for 8 years at an elementary school in Cabarrus County. During her school, she was invited to National Paideia faculty member, training principals and teachers around the country in Mortimer. Laura has both public and private school teachers locally in the Charlotte area, as well as educators in other counties in North Carolina, New Mexico, Texas, Pennsylvania, among others. She's a regular presenter at the annual National Paideia Conference. So I just want to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Laura Cook.
Good evening, folks, and thanks for having me tonight. I'm really excited to tell you about Paideia, and if I can navigate the Zoom program, I'm hoping that I'm going to share a screen with you. I've created a PowerPoint presentation. On this PowerPoint presentation, I have asked questions. They can be rhetorical questions or not, but still food for thought. And if we have time and you would like to unmute and respond to some of those questions, please feel free to do so. I will give a minute for everybody to think about it. And after a minute, if folks want to just continue, that's fine. If not, then please chime in and we'll have a very short discussion, probably not more than 3 minutes per question. And then I should be finished in about 25 minutes. So let me see if you can see the screen that I'm going to share with you. And in some way, shape, or form, you need to tell me if you can see that.
We can see it.
All right, so everybody's good? We can all see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I thought about, instead of just introducing Paideia to you or talking to you about Paideia if you already know something about Paideia, I thought about connecting it to our national narrative. And I decided to do that because I believe that there are 3 things in our country that make us who we are, and one of them being education. And I think that defines who we are. I think it defines who we want to become. And so I decided to link our national narrative to Paideia education. So with that in mind, I would ask that you keep this essential question, who are we, based on Paideia, and think about that as I take you through this PowerPoint presentation. And it's not changing. Eek. Kevin, you have to tell me what to do. How come it's not moving? That's not good.
Maybe you have to move to a different window. Maybe click on the window where your actual PowerPoint presentation is.
Okay, let's see. So yeah, but I don't want you guys to have to see that. That's pretty boring.
But it might be a limitation of our software.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's okay. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay, but that's not working. Okay. So can you see a new screen, folks?
Yes.
All right. Oh, yay, it's working. Okay. So you guys already got a sneak peek. Anybody know what kind of a dish that is? So that's paella.
Paella?
Yes, paella, right. And so no, paideia is not a Spanish rice and seafood dish. Haha. All right, trying to keep things light here. But instead, I gave you a couple of ways that this word, paideia, is pronounced. The authentic Greek way of pronouncing is paideia, but very frequently in America, you will hear folks pronouncing it paideia. You can also hear another version of it, as Kevin and I spoke about, that we also like, is Paideia. So depends on where you put your, where you accent your syllable. So exactly what is it? It is a Greek root word, and it means the upbringing of a child, and it's where we get our words pedagogy and pediatrics from. The National Paideia Center, which is based in Asheville, North Carolina, the National Paideia Center has an interesting history as well. They started in Chapel Hill. Then there was a huge push to move it to University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Then it went back to Chapel Hill because that didn't seem to pan out. And now it's located in Asheville and is associated with UNC Asheville. And so in most of our manuals, the National Paideia Center will extend the word paideia or paidos with humanitas, and that's where we get our humanities, our word, the humanities. And I really like the fact that the Paideia Center talks about the fact that general learning is the possession of all human beings. And I like the word possess in that frame of mind. So there is the Boston Latin School. It's the oldest school in our country. And the word paideia, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, and I think this is also a very, very interesting facet of paideia, is that it revolves around public life. And for us, it is extremely important that we're not educating individuals, but we're educating citizens. So let's just think about our national narrative, and let's see if we can come up with a consensus of what the original purpose of creating a public education system in America was, and how did they envision, the originators, the creators of that system, envision public education to be part of our national narrative. The other thing we want to think about is, for whom was this creation designed and why? So thinking about public education, So this gentleman is John Erskine, and he started the Great Books program at Columbia University. This next gentleman is Robert Maynard Hutchins, and he was the president at the University of Chicago. Both of these men were very instrumental in leading Mortimer Adler to creating a Great Books program. John Erskine started a Great Books program at Columbia University, but by the time Adler moved over to the University of Chicago, Robert Maynard Hutchins asked him to take over the direction of this program. And so Adler's contribution to the Great Books program was that it wasn't just about Western literature. He included mathematics and the natural sciences. And then he spent most of his life creating a syntopicon and developing the 102, some will say 103, great ideas found in those great books. We also have to notice that at the time when the Great Books program was alive, when Columbia, NYU, the University of Chicago, and other pretty prestigious colleges were looking at intellectualism, John Dewey was very opposed to the way, I'm not going to say he was opposed to being an intellect. He was opposed to the way in which teachers were teaching and the way in which students were learning. And so progressive education movement started late 19th century into the 20th century. And the whole premise behind John Dewey's very famous book, Experience and Education, is that our experiences in life should help us as learners and should follow us all the days of our lives. His experiential school, which he set up to prove that this his philosophy would work, didn't really get off the ground as well as he would have wanted it to. But his philosophy of education and all of the work that he did in another book where he says, which is titled How We Think, it greatly influenced Adler and greatly influenced the education as we know it today. So we have to think about how John Dewey's influence changed education in America and how experience prepares one for participation in a democracy. He thought that was the way to go. Adler, Hutchins, and Erskine believed that intellectual endeavors was what would keep our democracy alive. So there's Mortimer Adler, and he, in 1982, wrote the Paideia proposal. He is credited with having, with authoring this book, but it was a combination of the members of the Paideia group, and I provided a link for you if you're interested in learning more about the members of that Paideia group, which originated at the University of Chicago. And at the beginning of this particular manifesto, they're listed there, but you can see who was involved in creating this manifesto. Adler really wanted school reform. In the 70s, all through the 70s and into the early 80s, obviously, Adler was really disturbed by the fact that schools, public education, was becoming very specialized, and was also disturbed that we were, as a nation, introducing vocational and technical training. And so the Paideia proposal is very short. I think it's about 84 pages, but it's a really quick read about why he believes that getting a general liberal arts humanities program in schools was the way to go, and that we should not be specializing education. So Adler received a lot of kickback when that proposal came out, because he claimed pretty adamantly that our schools were becoming anti-intellectual. And so his concern was that if we become anti-intellectual, then we're endangering our civic participation in society. And he saw that as an erosion of American democracy. Oops. And so from Dewey's point of view, we can ask the question, how does experience lead to civic participation? Experience in education, how does that lead to civic participation if you're in a specialized program? And how do the liberal arts or a humanities curriculum foster intellectualism and civic participation? What is the correlation between them? So our national narrative, if we go with the way the Paideia group and Mortimer Adler thought about in the Paideia proposal, we would look at the big question of who are we? What do our schools provide? Who are they for? Why are they there? And what are people doing, young people doing, when they leave school, 13 years of school? So in the Paideia proposal, it's very theoretical, it's very philosophical. And Adler wrote the Paideia program as well, and lays out, it's a much heftier book, but lays out the entire curriculum and program of a Paideia education. And so he decided that, the Paideia group decided that there were certain principles that were evident and inherent in Paideia education. I only have the first 4 here, and I am going to read them. I know that you can read, and I'm not insulting anyone's intelligence here, but I'm reading them because I want to iterate that all 4 of these are the very first 4 principles, and then there are 8 more. But I'm going to read them slowly, because sometimes we take for granted what we think we assume about education. And these have become buzzwords in education today, in public education today, but let's try to hear them with new ears. The Paideia principles are that all children can learn, that all children deserve the same quality of schooling, not just the same quantity. That the quality of schooling to which children are entitled is what the wisest parents would wish for their own children. The best education for the best being the best education for all. And that schooling at its best is preparation for becoming generally educated in the course of a whole lifetime. And that schools should be judged on how well they provide such preparation. So this is these principles, and the first 4 are, again, prominently placed at the beginning of all the principles. But these, like I said, are ones that we assume are happening in our education system today, and that might not necessarily be the case. And so I ask you, in the last principle, it says that the best, the schooling at its best is preparation for becoming generally educated. So we're all currently living in the 21st century, and I ask you if a general education serves us well today, or is specification necessary for success in life in the 21st century? So the best education for the best is the best for all. I think we all know what is best, but who decides what is best? How are those decisions made? And for whom do we intend them to be? Is there an end to our education? The other principles that are posted in Adler's 12 Paideia principles, one of them is the next, the second question here. What role does education play in earning a decent living, making a good life for ourselves and our families, and for becoming a good citizen of the world while preserving and perpetuating a democracy? So one of Adler's principles is that a Paideia education should help us to earn a decent living, make a good life, and become a good citizen of the world. I would like to say that Adler and the Paideia group, Robert Maynard Hutchins, John Erskine, and John Dewey, all have great theoretical and philosophical approaches to education. But personally, and because I'm a Paideia educator, personally, I believe that Adler melded all of the philosophical approaches into a very usable program for teaching and learning. And so he came up with these 3 columns of teaching and learning, and they look like this. If I was doing a training with educators, I would tell educators that when you look at 100% of your week or 100% of your day, it should be divided up into these following 3 columns. That the didactic teaching, which is very akin to straight up lectures and teacher in the front of the room, should only be occurring 10 to 15% of your day or your week. Didactic teaching is necessary. We need to have knowledge. Students need to be informed. And so it is a necessary part of learning. However, it shouldn't be the only way young people learn. The second column is coaching. And he uses the word coaching because as educators, we coach young people into developing their intellectual skills. And that has, and I'll get to the next slide, but that has expanded also to, in the 21st century, that's also expanded into creative skills, physical skills, and manual skills. But mainly 60 to 70% of a teacher's day should be in coaching young people to develop their intellectual skills. The last column is seminar, and the Paideia seminar, Adler called it the enlargement of the understanding. And he believed that in order to have an understanding of conceptual ideas and values that people hold, you needed to have discussion. And so 15 to 20% of your week, your it is suggested that you have a Paideia seminar 15 to 20% of your actual time teaching within a week. And we'll get more into that in just a moment. So I believe that this is the ultimate way, method of teaching. It doesn't necessarily mean that that your practice is assumed within these three columns. But for a methodology, I believe that this is an excellent way of teaching and learning. So didactic teaching would basically would revolve around this type of, in a teacher's mind, this is what a teacher thinks of. Okay, what is the content that I have to teach? What do students need to know? How am I going to deliver that instruction? With what tools will I do it? Or materials? And how is the student going to acquire that learning? And how will I know if that learning has been acquired? And so this is pretty much straight up. You sit at the desk, the teacher tells you what you need to know, and hopefully the teacher will use a myriad materials and tools in order to help individual students to learn that particular content. Kevin recently sent me an article about reading. We've been talking about reading actually for a couple of weeks now. And in this particular New York Times article, the author speaks about the fact that it's not that our students do not know how to read, it's that their knowledge base is not built up enough. They're not accumulating and acquiring knowledge that they need to hold on to. They're very limited scope. And so this is why didactic teaching is extremely important, even though Adler believed 10 to 15% of your day or week is devoted to didactic teaching. Development of intellectual skills. So what are intellectual skills? It needs to be defined. Adler would tell you that intellectual skills are reading, writing, speaking, listening, and thinking. And again, in Dewey's book, How We Think, excellent read for understanding how our brains work when we are acquiring new information, responding to new information, drawing from old information, getting rid of information that's not useful to us. And so these intellectual skills are really the basis of what a teacher is asking a student to do, and they need to be coached. So how do we develop these skills in young people? Well, I personally believe that habit is really important. And so habits of mind and just general good habits for learning, studying, remembering. There seems to be a view that we don't need our memory because we have Google. And so that's, I don't believe that either. It's really important that we use our memory and we keep it up. So the teacher in the classroom helps young people to develop their intellectual skills by helping them in their reading, writing, listening, and speaking endeavors. So where does vocational training and preparation fit in the development of intellectual skills? Maybe 100 years ago, if we were having this conversation, someone would say, well, they don't. I would disagree. I believe that vocational training and preparation do fit into the category of developing intellectual skills, especially in today's day and age. And so I think that would be a conversation for another day, but it's still food for thought. And I would ask that you think about that, because the manual arts are a crucial part of who we are in America. And so what role do the manual arts play in intellectual skill development? And we can continue to think about that. So this is just a really short list on how we ask children to develop their intellectual skills, and teachers do this on a regular basis. So the Paideia seminar, Adler entitled it Enlargement of the Understanding, as I said before. According to the National Paideia Center, the definition of a Paideia seminar is an intellectual collaborative dialogue facilitated with open-ended questions about a text.
Okay, I think we just lost Laura. Hang on.
I imagine she'll be back.
Yeah. Right. I can actually pull up the last slides for her if she's, wow, that was kind of, she just dropped right off there. No warning. Okay. Sorry, everyone, I'm pulling up, seeing if I can gather, pull up the slides that she had running. Oh. Are you back, Laura?
No, that's me.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay. Kevin, do you want to finish up, or are you?
Sure, I'll bet clean up until she comes back. So I'm not going to, there she is. She's back.
Oh, yay. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay.
Technology.
So, yeah, technology. Good stuff. Okay, so let me see if I can, is my screen showing?
That's my screen.
That's your screen? Oh, it's,
Yeah.
ow.
I have a copy. I got the answer.
Oh, okay. So are you going to manipulate it then?
If you would like me to try, I can. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Is this where I'm at? Paideia seminar? Yeah. Okay. So according to the National Paideia Center, the definition is the intellectual collaborative dialogue facilitated with open-ended questions about a text. So if I was doing a Paideia seminar training with teachers, that's the first piece of information that you would get. It is the very first type of training that teachers receive before they receive intellectual coaching training. It is practicing the conceptual understanding of ideas. And Adler spent much of his life creating this syntopicon, which includes his 102 great ideas. And there he is, as a very young man, creating his syntopicon and all of the books that he read in the great books of the Western world, and he divided or classified them according to ideas and values. And so those great ideas can be found in the second book of the Great Books of the Western World. Sorry, the first volume. These are the ideas and values that one uses for a Paideia seminar. I would have to say have them memorized because I've been using them for so long. I will have to admit, though, that I've never done a seminar with the idea of oligarchy, and that's probably the only one. So we look at a text and we read that text, prose, fiction, poetry, mathematics, science, history, historical documents, and we decide what the ideas that are embedded in that text are. And Adler originally wrote a lesson plan for facilitating a seminar, and it was very simple. You needed a title of a text, and you needed to choose what the key great ideas were, and then you needed a basic set of questions. And he labeled these questions as an opening question, a core question, and some closing question. And he developed these questions based on his book, a discussion guide for seminar leaders, or discussion leaders, he called it. And so those questions are based on fact, interpretation, and evaluation. And we still pretty much follow that same protocol when we're writing Paideia seminar lesson plans today. The National Paideia Center has improved and built upon Adler's original seminar plan. And when we do training, we ask teachers to use the official and formal Paideia seminar lesson plan. The Paideia seminar lesson plan now follows, it has 3 components to it, or 3 parts. It has a pre-seminar section, which allows students to, or adults, depending on who you're doing a seminar with, to focus on their intellectual skills of reading and writing. The seminar part is all speaking and listening, and thinking, of course. And then the post-seminar really revolves around writing. And so one of my colleagues at the Paideia Center, she used to be the associate director, calls this the entire literacy event. So, the only thing I can say about the Paideia seminar is that it sells itself. In talking to you about Paideia seminar without actually experiencing it does not do it justice. And it's why when we train teachers, that the very first thing that we do is a Paideia seminar. We don't teach anything, we don't talk about anything. We do a Paideia seminar so that participants realize its value and its worth, and how incredibly impactful it is for participants to engage in a discussion about a text. So I've never done an Paideia seminar before, but we're going to try. The next time that you meet, Kevin's asked me to try to do this Paideia seminar and see how this venue works. But we're going to read Dr. Martin Luther King's essay that he wrote for the student newspaper at Morehouse College called The Purpose of Education. And I've included a link so that you can download it, or not. You can just Google the PDF version of it. And then I did include a PDF of a graphic organizer. In asking participants to do a pre-seminar, other than annotating a text, which you should do, I'm asking you to use a double entry journal, which I use with my students. And I've been using this, a double entry journal, as an adult as well when I participate in seminars. And it just helps us to gather our thoughts and to give some thinking to the text before you actually come to seminar. So normally, I would give you the text. I would ask you to read it once. I would ask you to read it again. And in this particular text, I would ask you to highlight every time Dr. King uses the word education. I would ask you to identify unknown words and then find the definition of those words. And I would ask you to annotate it and respond to it directly on the text. We'll probably also number the paragraphs so that when we refer to the text, we will all be on the same page and know where each other is. The graphic organizer is another tool that you can use to respond to the text. So if there is, I think is that the last thing on there, Kevin? Oh, yeah. So the other thing is I'm not going to share the actual lesson plan with you, but before we do the seminar, but I will definitely share it with you when we're finished so that you can see the formatting and the amount of planning that goes into creating a seminar plan.
Well, can you explain what double entry means?
Yes, a double entry journal means that you're going to, Kevin, is there any way to open that or no? A double entry.
It was a local file. The link was a local file on your computer, so I'm looking it up online right now.
You can't because I made it.
Oh, maybe you can
Sorry.
share it.
Yeah, okay.
You can share your screen again now.
Okay. So a double entry means that you choose a quote from the text, and then you write what you think, what you believe the author meant in that particular quote. And then you write what your response is to that quote. So I'm pulling it up. Yeah. Let me see. Share. Share screen. Here it is. Can everybody see that?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's called a double entry because you're not just telling me what you think the author's meaning is, but you're going to actually respond to that. And it makes you a little bit more cognizant of the quote that you pick. And with students, it's not just the first line just so they can get it over with. They have to actually read through the text and decide what quote they want to respond to. And I've asked you to do 2 on this particular entry.
That's great. We'll need to just make sure we get that. If you could send me the PDF
Sure.
tonight, and then I'll send it tomorrow in the announcements. So that'll be great. So sorry, I'll pass it back to you, Kevin.
So is there any other question? Again, we're going to take and send this information out. Does anyone have a last question for Laura? Laura, thank you for your presentation. I'm looking forward to the actual seminar. My experience has been that even people who, adults, for the first time they participate in the Paideia seminar, they kind of wonder what happened to them for the 12 years they were in school.
Yeah.
They usually feel like they were cheated.
Yes.
So
that's
I'm
a good way to put it.
That everyone will be able to be back on the 23rd, so that you can experience it rather than hearing about it, also be able to participate. But is there a last question for Laura before we finish the meeting?
I just wanted to make a comment that this was really interesting, and I'm very excited about the January 23rd reading. So I think it'll be really, it's an experiment for us. I think it's really fun, and we're all in Rotary to learn, I think, and to do service. So this is a really good way for us to kind of dig in a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Gene Perry, and as a teacher, it's great just getting homework. So. So I can't wait.
That's great. great.
Well, I think you're the first person I've heard that say, yay, I got homework.
I love it. Are you kidding?
Well, the text, the essay is really fabulous. It's one of my favorites. So I think you'll like it.
I had a question. So, is this the school of thought being used across all schools in America, or is it just being applicable by given or a certain type, given number of schools?
So it is not being used in all schools across America. It is being used in schools whose principals believe in it and who choose to have their teachers trained. So you will see schools using Socratic seminar, but it's not the same as a Paideia seminar. The focus is a little bit different. So
why do you think other people are finding it hard to embrace this school of thought?
Because it takes a lot of work and a lot of planning on the teacher's part. And you don't necessarily are given a curriculum or a text with a script, and you're told what to teach, how to teach it, and what to do if there's problems or issues. And to embrace intellectual coaching is a little bit out of the box. Even though we know we do it, it takes a lot of planning. It truly does. And it's very comprehensive, which requires a teacher to think way beyond what am I doing when I walk into school tomorrow.
So maybe my last question is, compared to the other school of thoughts, what is the outcome of using these? What is the advantage of using these? What is the outcome? Is the outcome different from other school of thoughts being used in this educational setup in America? Like, how do you know this one is the best over the others?
That's a great question. Being a Paideia educator for the last 25 years, I would say that we know it is the best because we're not teaching students a thing. We're teaching students to be, and young people to be to learn how to learn how to ask questions, to learn how to be responsible and resourceful, which are habits and skills that are not necessarily can be tested in an end of grade or an end of course exam. However, students who are in a Paideia program have consistently shown better standardized test scores than students who are not in the public schools. And a perfect example would be the Chattanooga School of Arts and Sciences, CSAS. They've been a fully implemented Paideia school probably for 20 years now. And it's just overall really good and healthy for humans.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Rhonda, I have a question. Listening to this, it seems to me I came up in the 70s through my education and early childhood education through the Catholic school system, through parochial school. And it seems like some of this is going back to that way of teaching and thought. It is fair to say today we have come so far away from the basics that this teaching children how to think is like vital right now.
Mm-hmm.
Say though that this was how the America of old, the school system of old once was set up, where they were teaching. It seems similar. I mean, they didn't call it Paideia, but
Yeah.
some of the principles here I recall. It kind of refreshed my memory.
I've never attended a Catholic school. My mother did, and I don't necessarily. I believe the nuns would teach didactically for most of the day,
Yeah.
and I never heard her talk about getting in a circle and having a discussion about a text. So I really can't make that comparison. But I would imagine that the rigor in a Catholic school and the expectations were such that it made for education to be something that young people valued. And so that's another conversation for another night, is how much value do students put on education, and where does that come from? So I'm not an expert in making that comparison with Catholic schools, but there's much of it that is probably very similar.
Right. And not just Catholic school, just back in the 60s, 50s when we were taught, a lot of the thinking, the processing.
Oh, yes.
Is very similar to what you're talking about. So it seems like this is a principle, at least in principle, is brought back.
Absolutely. Because Adler did adopt a lot of Dewey's philosophical thinking about thinking. So, yeah, it's there.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for your questions and your comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Can you unshare your screen for, and I'm going to share mine. I thought I could override yours, but I cannot. So we're going to end this evening with the 4-way test. So Jean, how about you lead us tonight? Oh, I've got you muted.
A 4-way test.
Of the things.
Thank you.
First, of the things we think, say, and do. Number 1, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you so much, Jean, and thank you everyone for being here. And I hope you'll tune in for part 2 of Laura's seminar. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.